Liverpool are going to look completely different under Arne Slot next season, and I'll be explaining why Frimpong and Kerkez will reinvent Slot's build-up tactics, why Mo Salah is in line for a brand new role, and the unexpected position that Florian Wirtz could play in. So how will these new signings change Liverpool? And what exactly are Slot's new tactics? So last season, Slot's formation was routinely 4-2-3-1. During build-up, and the goalkeeper would typically play short passes to his defenders. This season you've got Mamardashvili, who's going to be competing with Alisson certainly at some point, but I expect Alisson to still be the regular starter next season. But in the first phase of build-up, Trent's positioning is quite reserved, something that you'd often see from both fullbacks actually. And this was really interesting because it impacted Trent's chance creation last season, and it was his worst season for open play chances created since 2018-19. And that's probably because I think Arne Slot knew that he was very likely to be on his way out of the club. And so despite this, Trent still had a great impact, making excellent long-range passes from deep areas, often looking for the runs of Salah in doing so. What's weird here is his replacement, Jeremie Frimpong. He is not that type of fullback. He likes to stay as high as possible. He hardly ever touches the ball in build-up. I mean, look at how this compares to Trent's heat map. But that's exactly the point. Slot gave us a glimpse of a potential new system when he adapted after Robertson's red card against Fulham earlier in the season. Slot moved Gravenberch deeper alongside Van Dijk and Joe Gomez, essentially creating a back three with Robertson off the pitch. And so to understand what this means going forward, we now need to talk about the other fullback in the picture here, Milos Kerkez. Because when Liverpool bought Frimpong, most expected a more defensive left-back to counterbalance his extreme attacking approach, especially with the past that he's had with players like Gertrude. He's not played with two out-and-out fullbacks, but it would seem that is not the case. Kerkez, if he comes in, is another player that regularly bombs forward, as you can see from his heat map. So, how is Slot going to find the balance in this team when Frimpong wants to be here and Kerkez wants to get forward into these positions? Well, I've got an idea, because on paper it sounds like it could be something like this. However, given what we know about Kerkez and Frimpong, they are likely going to want to have high starting positions due to their attacking nature. And even if Kerkez is a little bit more reserved, there's still an imbalance there. And I think this could be the possible solution. And we'll tell you exactly why that is a little bit later on. Now, despite being used as an attacking midfielder in a 4-2-3-1, Slot's use of Dominik Szoboszlai, it has recently seen him dropping into deeper areas in build-up. And I think that's a bit of a clue. And when Szoboszlai receives the ball, you can see that a three-man defence was in fact formed. However, there are two key aspects here that will be different next season. Firstly, Robertson, one of the players forming the three, will likely become a second choice left back, it seems, next season with Kerkez's arrival. And whilst Kerkez could play in this role, it's just, it's not the best use of him, given how effective he is making powerful runs down the left and of course combining with wingers. And then of course you have Connor Bradley, who has inverted here, moving into midfield, and essentially he's emulating Trent's instructions. However, just like Kerkez, this isn't going to be the best use of Frimpong moving forward, meaning that the slack will be picked up by the midfield. On paper, I think it will likely look something like this. In build-up, it's not impossible that it will look something actually like this. Kerkez will stay high, so will Frimpong. Szoboszlai dropping deep alongside McAllister, I think it could play a massive role in this. Gravenberch slotting between the two centre-backs for the first phase could be key too. In Slot's first season, Gravenberch was usually the receiver of the first pass out of defence, meaning that he was the person that Liverpool looked to when passing the ball from the defensive third into that middle third as they look to transition through, you've guessed it, the thirds. So, how do they overcome this if Gravenberch slots between the two centre-backs? Well, remember those triangles that we showed you earlier? Well, they're still there. But the difference is, there's more of them now. Gravenberch slotting in allows for all of these players to be connected in the first phase of build-up. And this is a principle that Slot has even used before at Feyenoord. Slot used Gertrude to do this, an inverted right back. But obviously you can't ask Frimpong to do this. It's a waste of his talents, it's a waste of his skills. So it could be Gravenberch picking up these positions and unlocking those triangles. And the goal of having Gertrude in this position, it was to drag opposition players into central areas when they were pressing. And so this is where more triangles come into play for Liverpool. After the first pass in build-up has been made, you then enter the second phase where you can expect to be pressed by the opposition. And most teams press in a 4-4-2 now. And so these triangles, they just outnumber them. It's the new meta. By having this three-man line of Virgil van Dijk, Gravenberch and Konate, you outnumber the two forwards pressing for the opposition, meaning you always have an outball. And so that means that if Konate is now getting pressed by one of the two opposition forwards, he has the option of going back to Alisson inside to Szoboszlai or wide to Frimpong. So say he gives it to Szoboszlai and bypasses that opposition striker. It then becomes a question for the opposition of who presses Szoboszlai. Is it the winger or does a centre midfielder then press him? And due to the pressing structures in the Premier League and teams being obsessed with protecting the middle, it'll likely be a winger that moves centrally to press Szoboszlai in this instance. And that's the genius of this, because it means that the winger is forced to leave Frimpong and the ball can likely be passed to him in the exact sort of position that he was receiving it when being so devastating at Leverkusen. So then what about the attack, I hear you ask? We know Salah likes to take up those wide spaces, so you're treading on his toes, right? And meanwhile, where is Florian Wirtz going to play? Many view Wirtz as an attacking midfielder, and they'd be correct. But he isn't tied to this one position. He's excellent at drifting inside from the left, and it's not uncommon to see him in these wide areas. And whilst he's there, he's pulling off ridiculous pieces of skill like this. Close those legs. Naughty, naughty. What I will say is his natural instinct isn't to proceed into this space. It's to move inside and to work within those half spaces. And that worked perfectly because Leverkusen had Alejandro Grimaldo holding the width on the left. And this assist that he provided to Jonas Hoffmann could hold some key indications as to how he intends to use Florian Wirtz, but also how he's going to use Mo Salah. And what this shows us is that Wirtz may not play as a 10 for Liverpool. I think he might play as a left winger. Firstly, we need to assume that Gravenberch will likely step back into the defensive midfield role after the first phase of build-up, allowing both McAllister and Szoboszlai to split into slightly wider positions and keeping the width. And the final third will be, as we spoke about, Kerkez and Frimpong. And because they're keeping such width, it opens the door to wingers stepping inside. Step up first, Florian Wirtz. And then the second person stepping inside is Salah. Bit of alliteration there. Last season, Salah was often starting in those wider positions and then looking to move inside into those central areas, often getting to that point, that's kind of corner point of the opposition's box where he would do his damage, be it a shot, a cross, a pass and go, whatever it might be. And so with Frimpong doing that role, it's feasible that Salah will likely alter his starting position and be more central. But let's stop it there, because there is a problem with this tactic that we haven't addressed yet. It's all well and good Szoboszlai dropping deep to form those triangles, but with him dropping deep, you don't have that central figure to pass to in the next phase. And therefore, I believe that Slot will be looking to strengthen in this area as well, because he could look to bring in a profile that they don't really have, and they haven't had since Roberto Firmino, a striker that can drop into midfield and link the play. By having this profile, it forces one of the opposition midfielders to latch onto him, and it breaks up that midfield pressing structure once again. That opens up the half spaces and gives the wingers the ability to receive progressive passes and play through that press. This is such a unique profile for a striker. Forget Haaland and that type of target man forward. This requires a technical striker who is comfortable receiving the ball in tight areas. And so who will that be? I've got an idea. Who do you think it will be? Let me know in the comments.